Welcome to Success in Motion. Join us as we dive deep with top leaders, entrepreneurs, and professionals, uncovering strategies to grow, scale, and succeed.
Welcome back to the Success in Motion podcast. This is your host, Michael Bishop, and I am here with Lindsay Jordan. Lindsay Jordan has, over the past 7 years, raised an amazing $250 million in funds through the company that she started, and she is the CEO of Right On Fundraising. Now, Lindsay has a pretty interesting story of how she got into fundraising, and this is very close to her heart. So I'll let her share this story.
Yeah, well, thank you, Michael. I appreciate that. Way before I realized that fundraising was how I was going to make money, I had a really unique opportunity in my life to see what the inside of a medical crisis looks like. My little brother John was diagnosed with cancer when he was 3 years old, and we live in Oklahoma, so that meant we were traveling to Memphis, Tennessee to go to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital for his treatment. And he was there for about 5 years. We were there for a pretty long time, back and forth. Over that period, I met a young man, which shows my age now. It's weird to say young man, but I'm not sure what else to call him. And he and I struck it up. We established a relationship. We got close. We dated long distance, and then we eventually got married. 1 year into me being married at the ripe old age of 18, we kind of realized like, hey, did we rush this maybe a little bit? Should we think about maybe going to college or something? And so we kind of thought maybe we had taken a wrong turn, shake hands, be friends, go separate ways. Within the 30 days that it takes to like file for a divorce in the state of Tennessee, he relapsed with cancer, and it was really serious. It was a very serious relapse.
Yeah.
And I decided I did not want to be the type of person who walked away. So I stayed with him. And that journey ended up lasting 4 years. And it was really, really intense. A lot of traditional and what's the word? The types of therapies that are not traditional, like new state of the art therapies. And the people that I met there became family. And that's really kind of what defined my role later on in life as a fundraiser. So I actually had an opportunity to get real close to this woman, and she had two kiddos, and she was adopted. She didn't know that she had a very rare blood disease that would only be passed on to boys, and she had two sons. So they were both there with us at St. Jude battling a terminal blood disease. And on the inside of a healthcare crisis, there's a lot of pom-poms, there's a lot of rah-rah, and people surrounding you. But those who've actually walked through a medical crisis know it can be really isolating, and a huge financial struggle. And that particular, it can also be like really lonely. So many parents or caregivers going through it, they might like actually reach out to other people and establish relationships. And one day in particular, I was up on the fourth floor of St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, which is where you go when you're having like a real tough treatment, right? And we were up there. One of her youngest sons was up there. And in the middle of the night, I'm dead asleep, all these sirens start going off. And I at first think it is like my former husband. I'm looking at his machines going, oh my gosh, what's happening, right? What do I need to do? Who do I need to call? And then I realize, because I'm very, very sleepy, after a minute or so, that it's not his machines. Everything there is fine. I walk to the windows, which are all glass, so you can see everything happening on the floor. And across the hallway, I see Josh, who is one of her kiddos. And it's his room. All the lights are going off. All of the lights on the ceiling are on. And his machines are going off. And he's just laying still in his bed. And I see doctors and nurses just flooding into his room and getting out the machines. And my heart is breaking. Gosh, this was 20 years ago. It still makes me cry. Just looking at this poor little boy, this sweet little boy's body all curled up in these sheets, and they do everything they can, and after a few minutes they stop. And Josh died alone without anyone by his side, just, you know, because of the because of how hard it is to be in medical crisis and to take care of more people. And I thought that was ultimate, like universal injustice because here I was sitting here with Jason, my first husband, who, frankly, he was begging to die, throwing the urinal at the nurses. I mean, it's chemotherapy, cancer therapies, all of these things ravage your body. And here he was begging to let us go. And here Josh was begging to stay. And I felt like the whole universe pressed into me at that moment. And I realized my purpose. And that was if there was anything that I could do to be a counterweight that would make someone else's life just a little bit better, that would be everything. That could make all the difference. Um, my skills, my talents are in writing and in communications. So fundraising found its way to me, but it was a perfect match because it intersected so beautifully with what I felt like my purpose was as a human and how I could make the biggest difference in the world. $250 million is a great start, but it's a drop in the bucket compared to the number of people who need help and the number of nonprofits there are that do incredible work. So that's kind of how I found my way into a fundraising space.
That is a very impactful story, and I can only imagine what it felt like to sit in that hospital room in that situation. Um, so you've been doing fundraising for a long time now. You said that you've owned your business for 10 years. How long were you in fundraising before that?
Yeah, so right on, we actually just had our 7-year birthday. But before that, I fundraised in the field for 10 years for organizations that had national and international affiliations. So they were really common household brands, lots of resources, lots of tools. And over that 10-year period, I felt like things were going really well. It was a good time for me. I got my master's degree in nonprofit management and had a couple of babies. But over the course of 10 years, I saw a lot of things break in the nonprofit sector. I would see these really talented fundraisers who had totally well, they had very unrealistic expectations placed on them. So they would spin out really quickly. They would either bounce from nonprofit to nonprofit or they would leave the field entirely. The average amount of time that a fundraiser is with a nonprofit is 16 months. Oh my
Wow.
gosh, can you imagine as a business owner knowing every 16 months you have to replace your entire sales team? Like, what a huge lift. You lose so much institutional knowledge, you lose so many relationships. I'd seen CEOs run off. There's just, frankly, even though the nonprofit sector does such incredible work, it does so inside a pressure cooker. And that means that there are some really unhealthy practices. So at the end of 10 years, I had reached the point where I just felt like, you know what? I think this can be done differently, and I think this can be done better. And that's really the foundation of Right On Fundraising. We call it philanthropic equity. And for us, it's providing pathways out of old, antiquated, broken fundraising methodologies into new ways of fundraising that we've had a lot of success with.
And that leads right into my next question. There's a lot of competition in fundraising,
Yeah.
right? What
Mhm.
is it? What's the secret sauce that sets you apart from everybody else? When everybody else is trying to get their first million, you're sitting over here with 200 million under your belt.
Mhm.
What sets you apart?
Well, we're not just here to raise money. We're here to change how it gets raised. And it doesn't feel particularly radical to me. Like it feels like very sensical when you think about how things have changed in the nonprofit sector over the last 20 to 30 years. But the nonprofit sector is behind most of the time what's happening in the for-profit sector. So there are things that are happening in the for-profit world that it takes the nonprofit sector a little while to catch up to. So we're just kind of in a space where we're saying, hey, you know what? We're not going to fundraise through what we call poverty porn, which means we're not going to fundraise like Sarah McLachlan with her voice like over all the crying puppies. We're not going to show a picture of somebody on the worst day of their life and fundraise against it. That's gross. We're
Yeah.
going to center dignity. We're going to use human-centered language. We're going to fundraise from a space of hope and joy and what could be. And most importantly, we're going to position donors as partners. One of the reasons why there is a lot of toxicity within the nonprofit world is because donors kind of sometimes get put up on pedestals. And then, like for lots of donors, that's okay, but some of them maybe goes to their head just a little bit. So you'll see like someone demand a board seat in exchange for their donation, or someone kiss your director of development at the gala. Sexual harassment is a big deal in fundraising. So, by leveling the playing field between donors and nonprofits, by saying, hey, you're invited to be a partner in this incredible mission that this nonprofit is doing. Everybody's on the same field. It's not placing a donor above a nonprofit. It's not putting a nonprofit in a position where they feel like they have to beg for donations. And that, as weird as it is to me, because that sounds quite normal, as weird as it is, that's actually really radical in the nonprofit space. And
Yeah.
I think that's what has set us apart.
I love the idea of a partnership between those two groups. Partnership always goes further than begging. Yes, you can get something from begging, um, but it's not going to take you to the level that you want to be. You have to find a higher purpose, a higher relationship with your donors to make that happen. Um, so if someone wants to get into the fundraising space, where
Mm.
would you suggest they start?
That is a really great question. One of the beautiful things about fundraising or the nonprofit field in general is that many people do not have a linear or traditional path into nonprofit work. For some people, it is a passion project that evolved into a leadership opportunity. Other people find it through volunteering for the company that they work for, and then they end up just kind of coming in one role and moving their way up through the nonprofit. Personally, for fundraising, I have found that it's really helpful for people to have a background in communications because fundraising at the end of the day is very akin to for-profit sales. It's about creating empathy, it's about creating an experience, it's about connecting someone who wants to give money to someone who needs money, aka someone who has something to sell to someone who wants to buy. So communications, marketing, business fields, those are gonna come with some tool sets that are going to be useful in fundraising. If I really honestly think one of the reasons that we have been so successful is because we do look at, I mean, we're called Right On Fundraising, right? With the pin, with the W. Um, the core of so much of what we do is really authentic, spectacular communication. If we were not excellent communicators, we would not be able to raise the funds that we raise.
Yes, you definitely have to be able to communicate well to establish trust with your donors and with the nonprofit organizations. They have
Exactly.
to believe that you can connect them with the donors and the funds that they need to get through their next year of business or decade of business. And so if you can't establish that connection through your communication, you're really not going to satisfy either party.
Right.
I really like that you said there. So what is one of the biggest challenges you've had to overcome during your career?
In my whole career or running right on?
Let's just do the last 7 years.
Okay. Well, one of the biggest challenges, which is also one of the things that I'm most proud of, and when someone says, "Why are you successful?" It's like, "Oh, well, we've raised a bunch of money for nonprofits," but "we" is kind of the key there. I have a team of about 15 full-time fundraisers that works with me. I did not set out to be a lone wolf. That is not my MO. I really enjoy being part of a high-performing team. But I realized a couple years in that a lot of the folks who worked for Right On cared very, very deeply about the clients that we were serving, but they weren't fully connecting with why Right On Fundraising existed, right? Like why this company. It was almost more of like a contractor type of relationship. And I sat down with my number two and I said, like, why is this happening? And we went back and forth on it. And we realized there's a whole lot of things that are in my head that weren't on paper. Like I was eating and breathing and living this mission. And he was as well. But most of the staff members, we weren't doing a good job again of communicating, right? So we established something internal called the Right On Fundraising Academy, and it's the best thing I ever could have done. It basically grounded the entire culture of Right On Fundraising. So what the Academy does is it explores this idea that's called the nonprofit industrial complex. And basically, when we have discussions about it, we're having discussions about how we as fundraisers and the work we do, how we connect to that space and how we influence it, good, bad, or ugly, so that we're very aware of our role and our responsibility and that we're serving our clients best. That has opened up so many incredible conversations. It's almost like a college class. There's a reading every month. You have to do like one original post and one response, and then we have like a virtual discussion about it every month. But it means that everybody gets it. They know why we're here. They understand the framework about how we're serving our clients differently. They understand our theory of change as a company. I don't know a lot of other companies that have a theory of change. It's kind of a nonprofit concept. But the theory of change is this is how we're going to get from point A to point Z. Our theory of change, the first step, there's only four. The first step was build a great company, great reputation, great processes, great results, right? So we spent the first 3 to 5 years doing that. The second step is expand that audience. So that's actually the step we're in right now. I first tried to expand our influence just by creating more of us. At one point, we had 8 offices, and that is more direct reports than I ever want to deal with in my life again. Like it was such an overwhelming thing. It was like, oh, we have failed forward here. We're pulling back, we're recalibrating. We got to try this a different way because this is not it. But then we figured out that franchising would be a really wonderful way for us to leverage our influence or to grow that influence. So now
Yes.
we're actively working to franchise Right On Fundraising around the United States and just duplicate little copies of ourselves, of our team all over the place. The third step is then leverage that influence because nothing really changes about philanthropy until we are able to change the tax code. So we've developed a policy agenda with changes we want to see to donor advised funds and private foundations and itemized charitable tax deductions. It's very sexy stuff. Try not to fall asleep. But we have this agenda. And then, so once we have like expanded our audience, leveraged that audience with our policy agenda, step four, the final step is change how philanthropy happens. So and our entire team gets it. Everybody's committed to it. We're not here to show up every day and just write grants. We could do that. We could absolutely do that. And we have great results for our clients. But ultimately, the reason we're here is to be part of a movement that changes our sector.
I love it. So the challenge that you specified, if if I remember correctly, is you didn't have everybody on the same page,
Right.
which made it really difficult to get everybody to the same place.
Correct.
And it reminds me of a book that I'm rather fond of called Traction, which is the book based off of the EOS system for
Hmm.
business modeling. In that book, they talk about how you have to have your core values set up, and those core values are going to get everybody uh, in the same direction so that you can all pull together instead of pulling against each other, walking past each other, and just going all different directions. Core values to me are so important. You have to identify what it is that you want, and
Hmm.
you have to tell your people what that is. And everybody has to be on board, but they need to get off the bus. Because
Right.
if they aren't on board with the CEO's core values, then they're in the wrong organization. And yes, that doesn't make them bad people. They're still good people. They're just not the right people to be in your organization.
Mm. That's
And
really
so,
interesting. So I'm glad you brought that up because we actually used to have a different set of core values, and they were my core values. And as we moved along as a company, I started to see disconnect between employees and between core values. And so what we did is rather than moving forward with my core values, we established that theory of change that I mentioned, but then I made the team set the core values of the company. And they were ultimately very similar to what my personal core values are, but giving them an opportunity to take ownership of that and to really work on what the words meant.
yeah,
You put me on the spot. Let's see if I can remember all five off the top of my head. But so our core values are philanthropic equity, first and foremost. That's who we are. But also candor, celebration, impact, and compassion. And we actually have operationalized our core values. So they are part of everybody's annual review. And you have a quarterly check-in. So on a quarterly basis, you're talking to your supervisor about how you're practicing celebration with your clients, how you like what you're doing right now to push forward philanthropic equity. And we call out superstars who are doing different things really well all the time. And I feel like that I can't say it, operationalization, there we go, of the core values was really, really important to getting everybody on board. Because I feel like you can write them, and it's a little bit like a
yeah.
strategic plan. If you are not actively in it, then it just gets shoved on a shelf and gets dusty. And I feel like core values that is a challenge with core values.
Agreed. And when I say they have to be your core values, I didn't mean that you have to exclude the rest of your team,
Oh, yes.
but you have to live those core values because you, as the CEO, are the leader of your company.
Yeah,
Everybody looks to you, and if you're not living those core values, nobody cares about your core values because
absolutely.
it's just lip service.
Yeah,
But if they're your core values, and maybe the wording has been changed a little bit to meet the needs of the group,
right.
but they're who you are at the focus or at the core of who you are, and then
Yeah,
you can bleed that into your business, then it's going to be true to
yeah,
you and your nature. And every decision that you make is going to be based on those. And everybody in your organization is going to understand that
yeah.
this is how we do business. And if I don't want to do business this way, I need to go somewhere else because this is how this organization is going to operate. And
Uh, One of the things that, so as you're talking there, like celebration is not something that I ever would have picked for myself as a core value. And I think a lot of business owners are that way. Like, I think we move very quickly to the next thing, and we don't always take time to stop and celebrate just what it took to get over that last mountain before we're tackling the next one. It's definitely like that in fundraising. We'll win a grant and everybody will look up for 2 seconds and be like, yay, $300,000, heads back down, we're still going. So it was actually the staff that identified celebration as needing to be a core value, but because it was aspirational and it was something that was lacking. So I 100% agree with what you're saying. And to add to that, having an aspirational element in one of the core values has really helped because you're right. I do have to lead it. I have to set the tone. And that challenges me to do something for my team that my team has identified as very important that otherwise would not have been on the radar for me.
so I think it's pretty cool that you have a team that you can rely on to help pull those core values out of you, to help you see what they need to be. Sometimes we have core values, but it's hard for us to identify what those are
Hmm.
until somebody else says, this is one of your core values because you live it. So changing directions here just a
Yeah.
little bit. Um, a hot word, buzzword on social media these days is work-life balance. Do you
Yes.
think that that's a thing? And if so, what does that mean to you?
What a great question. Um, no, no, I don't think that's real. I think that's a bunch of hoopla. And here's why. I didn't start this company to kill myself or to work weekends. I specifically started this company to spend more time with my kids and to take more vacations and to have more control in my life. And I walked around for the first year of my business thinking I was doing everything wrong because Everybody told me how hard it was supposed to be and how many hours I was supposed to be working and what a sacrifice I was supposed to be making. Yeah, I made the most money in my life and spent the most time with my kids the first year of my of Right On Fundraising. And it's because I don't look at work-life balance. I look at seasons. There are seasons of my life in which it's very important for me to spend more hours in a chair working on the business, working with the clients. But that is not the norm. Right On Fundraising, as much as I love this company and everything we're about, is still a company. What matters most to me is my family and my time with my family. And I prioritize that. Again, we operationalize that. So at Right On Fundraising, our hours are 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. You can work 8 hours anytime between 7 to 7. Do not send a text. Do not send an email. You are going to be in big trouble if you're communicating with anybody outside of that window. And you have to have written permission from the CEO, AKA me, to work on a weekend. We have very specific, like, boundaries and rails put in place. One of the things that I actually got a lot of pushback on is our PTO policy. So we could have given out a lot of just general PTO. Instead, I leaned really heavily on holidays. So like we have 27 paid holidays for the year. And the reason I did that is because folks coming out of the nonprofit sector, and I'm sure this is true in other sectors as well, are notoriously bad at taking time off. I mean, they will squirrel away that PTO and then never ever use it and get burned out, which is unhealthy for them. It's unhealthy for the company. So I actually have all of this holiday pay in place to force my team to take a break. There are holidays that we celebrate that nobody else celebrates. And it's because I looked at the calendar and went, that's way too long of a gap between days off. We have to have something here to give people a break. So it's not work-life balance. It's life. It's just making sure you're making time for life because nobody's going to look back at the end of a career and say, gee, I really wish I'd worked longer hours. No, you're going to want more vacations. You're going to wish you had more time with your family. And I really honestly believe that the healthier our employees are, the better their work is going to be for the company, the better they're going to be for the clients. It makes us all healthy. It makes the whole company healthier.
Yeah, I really like the way you put that. It is life, right? And
Mm,
if you trying to focus on segmenting everything, you're gonna you're gonna get burned out. You're gonna make some kind of mistake. But when we look at life balance, that is really what we should be focused on, right? When you are doing work, go do work, be all in it. When you're at home, be at home,
right,
be all in it. When you're at church, when you're at a ball field, when you're at the grocery store, just be where you are and be present in the moment and stop getting distracted with everything else. Go live life and stop trying to do all of this crazy stuff that everybody else is telling you that you need to do.
right.
Again, thank you for sharing that. It sounds like things are going pretty well for you and your business. Um, a lot of people are looking towards the future and how they can create passive income
Yeah.
to enhance or even replace their current active income. What are your thoughts on this?
So that is the strategy around franchising. So in addition to expanding our influence and growing lots of additional offices, um, we're really kind of at a place as a company where we're very comfortable with the number of clients we serve and the number of staff we have. Everything, like you said, things are in a good place. They're firing on all cylinders. The best way for us to grow is through franchising because it helps us grow the team without home office having to make that investment in salaries, and the owners will make that investment. And also because it provides residual income. So there's, a royalty fee associated with franchises as well as initial startup fees. And that is honestly, that's the future of our revenue growth is residual income from or residual revenue from Right On Fundraising franchise who we're supporting. Like our franchise system is built with a ton of support, like a ton of support. We want them to have the academy. We want them to be able to duplicate the culture. It's not just about can you make a hamburger that looks the same as every other McDonald's hamburger. It's can you duplicate a culture that has led to our success. So that's really, really important to me in that piece. But also from a financial perspective, that's the future of Right on Fundraising's growth.
I love it. We definitely need to have multiple streams of income. Um, what kind of difference would it make in your life if all you had was the fundraising activities that you specifically perform yourself and you get sick versus you having this franchise model where other businesses are operating and you're collecting revenue from them? Like, how would that be different in your life if you didn't have that to back up on?
That's the plan. That's what I'm aiming for. I've done a pretty good job so far with in replacing myself. So I've done every single job. I used to literally write paper checks to the employees back in the day, and I would put them in little thank you cards and doodle notes on them. So that was the payroll processing department. So I've done every job within the company and been able to find really talented fundraisers and leaders to replace myself. My next goal is to replace myself as executive director of the home offices so that I can spend more time getting back to that theory of change, working on the policy piece, drafting legislation, working with our legislators to bring that change about. I know and frankly don't want to I know that it takes lots of people and that this is not something I can do by myself. Like I said earlier, I'm not a lone wolf and I love high performing teams. So my goal is to just continue my professional development and my ability to evolve, pass this seat off to somebody else and go work on the public policy piece. Past that, I will sit on a beach and drink Mai Tais and write children's books. The more talented people I can get in my orbit to do this work, the happier I am.
I love it. So, as we're wrapping up our interview, what exciting plans or initiatives do you have in the works over the next 6 to 12 months? Or, sorry, yeah, 6 to 12 months.
Oh, that's a really good question. Over the next 6 to 12 months, um, so right now, I've talked a lot about what we're focused on externally, but right now the nonprofit sector as a whole is in a pretty uncertain place. A lot has changed since the beginning of the year. Some of our clients have had major federal funding grants stripped. They've gone from $140 million to $0, right? On the flip side of that coin, we have some clients who are in a position to receive a windfall of funding from the federal government that they did not know was coming at the beginning of the year. So, no matter how nonprofits have been impacted by the current administration, it's big change for everybody. Big change means new donors, new systems, new stewardship, lots more resources, capacity building. So, honestly, the next 6 months for me are going to be very focused on our clients and what they need. We have one client who's coming up in June. They're getting ready for a 30% reduction in staff. That's a big deal. So we are going to have to be there for them through that. I have another client who is gearing up for a big windfall because of something that they've won. They've got to hire like 15 new people in 2 weeks. So there's just a lot that our clients need from us right now. So this is a season, right? Like we're in a season where I am needed, both from our clients and our team, because they need the backup, they need the support. And I will likely spend a lot more time with my clients than working on the business. And that's okay because the business is in a good place and we've got a plan and all those other things I talked about, those things are already set in motion. It's like a set it and forget it, right? I don't have to tend to those all of the time so that I can turn my attention to where it's really needed right now.
That's fantastic. I hope that that really works out for you and you're able to help your clients and your partners to be able to get to where they need to be and get through this turbulence. A lot of people look at trying times and turbulence and change as bad things, and sometimes it is bad, but quite often it's not and it's just different. And so we need to learn to pivot to be able to make those changes. And hopefully you can help these people through those pivots and make the changes so they can all land on their feet, the ones who are growing and the ones who are declining. Growing by 15 employees in 2 weeks can be just as challenging as losing 30 employees in 2 weeks.
Oh, yeah.
Both of those are difficult. Well, Lindsay, thank you so much for your time today, for sharing insights and tips and just what it is that you do that shows success in your world. If people want to get to connect with you to either learn more about nonprofits, to see about franchising, to just pick your brain about what it is, or anything that we've talked about today, what should they do to get in touch with you?
Check out our website. We have a lot of good stuff. Rightonfundraising.com. That's right with a W, like with a pen. You can also contact me through our website form. I handle all of our business development because it's one of my favorite things to do. So I'm always down to grab a virtual cup of coffee and learn more about organizations and if we're a fit for what they need.
Perfect. Well, guys, this is another episode of Success in Motion in the books, and I look forward to seeing you next.
Thanks for tuning into Success in Motion. Want to share your story? Visit successinmotionpodcast.com/guest to apply and be featured on the show.